Hey now, it's Brace for Impact, and I'm your host, Mike Gilbert, and I'm going solo on that ass, but it's still the same. We're talking TNA wrestling. The AXS TV era is dead. It was the end of an era. It started in 2019, and it is now over. We no longer have to hear about TNA not being on a good enough network, TNA having low visibility, people making the excuse that they don't have access, which is why they cannot watch Impact when Impact has always been available via the internet. So they never had to expand their cable package. But that was always like one of the things like, well, we can't watch Impact. I don't have access. Like, nah, you could watch it. You just don't want to. A swig of coffee or swig of water. Sorry for the working man there. Um, it is 11:06 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I am here in Charlotte, North Carolina, or the suburbs, I would say. I guess we better get used. Joel's in the house. His show must be over. I just finished watching Impact, and I was able to get on tonight. But I guess we should probably get used to this time, Joel, at 11 p.m. doing these podcasts. I'm pretty tired. But Joel asks, is TNA moving somewhere else? I hadn't heard. Yeah. The big news tonight was the last night of the AXS TV era. They will be moving on to AMC starting next week, and it'll be in a new time, 9 to 11. And all of the people that thought that TNA was going to be forced by the bullies at the WWE to go on Wednesday night to go head to head. So that way, because this whole thing is to tear down AEW. Now, there's some truth to that, by the way. I don't want to discredit that conspiracy theory at all. I do think there's a little bit of truth to that. That WWE wants to prop up TNA to be able to take away from AEW. I think it's a byproduct, right? I think that is part of it. I don't think it's the only reason. Although AEW fans would like to make this whole thing about them. So they have serial victim complex over there in Jacksonville. Not Tony Khan, but like the fans do for sure. But yeah, they won't be going on Wednesday. They're going on Thursday night from 9 to 11, and a new era has started. Man, I remember whenever we got the announcement that TNA, or I guess Impact Wrestling at the time, was headed to AXS TV. We had been watching. I had been doing the articles at the time for a website that I had started called the Combat Republic, and it was just a website that I wanted to do because I was looking into getting into writing. I had done a podcast before with my cousin Joe, and we were mainly, it's kind of like what JD and I do with the Mike and JD show, but we were watching, like, me and Joe were watching ridiculous amounts of wrestling, and it was mostly WWE. This was like 2017. It was mostly about WWE, and I'd gotten to a point where we did that podcast for 6 months. It was called the Podcast Express, and I had just gotten sick of pro wrestling. I'd gotten sick of WWE. I didn't want to watch it, didn't want to talk about it. So I took like a year off, and then after a while, I started getting the itch to do some content, and I became part of the Fight Game Media Facebook group, and me and Garrett Gonzalez had become friendly, and in that group was Josh Nason. Now that group has been disbanded because Garrett got kicked off of Facebook for whatever reason. To this day, he has no idea why, because he is like the least controversial person ever. So he got kicked off of Facebook somehow. Well, Josh Nason from the Wrestling Observer was in that Facebook group, and he put out a thing like, hey, if any of you guys are looking to get into writing, we're looking for recappers, right? And this story is going somewhere, I promise. And so I was like, okay, well, he goes, send me a writing sample and I'll see if I can get you on the Observer site. And I had never written for a site before, but just me being full of my own shit, I was like, okay. So I had written an article for my friend because he had a podcast. So I written an article for their podcast site. And I had literally only written one article before, and it was about the death of Bobby Heenan. So I did kind of like an obituary for Bobby Heenan. And I emailed that to Josh thinking I can get a recapping gig for the Wrestling Observer site. And he said, that's not exactly what we're looking for. So um, I just assumed that I could get a gig without any experience. I can go straight to the Observer. He said, "Go ahead and write and get some experience, and then we'll bring you on." I was like, "Okay," but I didn't know where to start, so I just created my own website. I legit did. I got a WordPress thing account, and I started like doing ads, and anyway, I started writing my own articles, and I wrote about TNA because I had started watching it in 2018. So this would have been right during the AXS TV era. 2019 is when I started writing about them, but I had been watching the show since 2018. Chris Jericho, which we'll get into in a little bit, oddly enough, is who kind of like encouraged me through his podcast to give TNA a chance again in 2018 when Scott D'Amore and Don Callis took over. So I started writing for my own website, and I started doing some TNA articles, and I did articles about every company. And I was doing articles about MMA and boxing and all kinds of stuff. JD had come onto the website, and that's how he and I met. He was writing movie reviews for the site, and we had a lot of fun with it. And you know, it was the AXS TV era that kind of like springboarded me as like, and I remember just watching, and I'm writing articles at the time, and AXS TV, we get the big announcement. I think it was like the summer prior to 2019. It was the summer of 2018. I might be getting my time frame mixed up here, so bear with me. No, it was the summer of 2019. That's right, summer of 2019. I'm already writing articles at the time, and we get the big announcement over the summer. And I think the news had been broken by Voices of Wrestling, but a guy named Front Bro Brian, a real scumbag, but he was pretty plugged into the MMA business side, and had broke the news that Anthem was looking to buy AXS TV. And then sure enough, I think Voices of Wrestling was able to confirm the story. They broke it. And then eventually, like, yeah, it was true that Anthem had purchased AXS TV, and then TNA would be leaving the Pursuit Network, and they would be on AXS TV. And they did the first episode, I think, right after Bound for Glory, and the main event was Brian Cage versus Sami Callihan. And Sami Callihan had won the world title. So, and the rest you could say is history. I just remember being really excited about it because I was watching Friday nights, late night, on Twitch. I didn't have Pursuit. No cable company that I knew of had it. I've been watching on Twitch, and since they left Twitch, I deleted Twitch. I've never been back on it. I'll never go back. I did not like the interface. I didn't like the community. I didn't like anything about it. But I, endured it to watch TNA because I did enjoy the show. And I was just really excited that they were going to AXS TV because at the time I was an AXS TV viewer. That's where New Japan was at, and New Japan had there for a while. They were showing 1 hour shows every week, and it was Mauro Ranallo and Josh Barnett doing the commentary. And then eventually, when Mauro got signed by the WWE, New Japan brought in, or I guess it would have been AXS brought in Jim Ross to do that. And so I had already been watching AXS TV for years because not only was New Japan on there, but they had a lot of MMA fights on there, and you could watch LFA. It was called HDNet Fights, and they would just go around all these different promotions, and they had Japanese MMA and local regional MMA, and they do some boxing stuff. They had some comedy stuff. They're showing a lot of movies. They had a lot of music videos and concerts, and I thought AXS TV was a cool channel at the time. And then Anthem took over, and they killed the channel. They made it, they put TNA on there, and TNA didn't really fit with it because the rest of it was just like Sammy Hagar concerts from 30 years ago, and reruns of the Monkeys and stuff like that. So they really stripped that channel down to its bare bones and killed it essentially. And but I thought that they had a pretty good run on AXS TV, but there for a while, I did feel like the company had gotten completely complacent because it didn't seem like they had goals and this was my issue with Scott D'Amore for a while. I just didn't feel like he had a lot of goals at the time, and I could be misreading that situation, but he would go on and say that, now that we're on AXS TV, we don't have the proverbial gun to our head. We can sit back and enjoy this thing and be comfortable. And I just felt like they were complacent and they weren't really striving for something. It did after a while. They did start to get to some incremental growth, like what we see right now, the TNA that's about to do 3,000 tickets for an episode of Impact, which is on AMC, which is like unfathomable whenever I was watching in 2019 on AXS TV. Like, they're doing like 200-300 a night and all these small like bars and nightclubs and stuff like that. So now they're going to do like 3,000 in Dallas for an episode, a live episode on AMC, and that's crazy. They did the growth really started in like 2023, I would say. We started seeing some slower incremental growth in 2024. We got a little bit bigger. 2025 like exploded, right? And then now 2026 is probably going to be one of the biggest and most important. And it could be a dangerous year for TNA. It could be, because we don't know how long. Like they said, it's a multiple year deal, but there's out clauses. There's all kinds of stuff. And if this show doesn't perform, they're on their ass. Because I don't, they could go back to AXS TV, but if they do, like stick a fork in the company. Like they probably won't die, but you're probably looking at them being back to just after post-pandemic levels of where they would be if they blow this thing. So they got a lot of pressure on them, and that's a good thing. I think having that kind of pressure is a good thing. And sometimes it can force you to perform, and like that pressure, can create diamonds, right? And I could see the social media from the wrestlers and the interviews that they're doing. They're feeling the pressure too. They really want to come out and perform. And, I know the executives feel that way. And I think that they're going to come out, and hopefully they come out with a bang. I'm excited for next week. I think it's, January 15, 2026 is going to be one of the most important nights in the history of the company. And they really need to come out and set the tone and let everybody know that they're not here to fuck around, that they're here to mean business. That doesn't mean they have to debut all these huge names, because I don't think they have the resources to be able to do that, which there is a new rumor out there. So we're going to address it here in a sec, but that's not what I'm saying. They got to come out with some new characters. They got to come out with some big storylines. And they got to hook people right away. It can't be the same old shit. And what I fear is that this promotion and this company and the people that are working there are going to present the same old shit, right? And that can't happen. And if that happens, then I think that this whole thing is doomed, right? It could even be a good episode, but if it's the same shit that we see every week, then I think they're in trouble. And Joel says, nothing says we're serious about success like bringing Perez Hilton to the show. What in the hell are they thinking? Perez Hilton is, I'll be honest, I didn't even want to talk about him, but I think we kind of have to, because like this weird elephant in the room. I'm not calling him an elephant, but it's the weird elephant in the room. Perez Hilton was like a sleazy tabloid guy from the mid like 2007, like 2010 time frame. And he had gotten canceled for outing a bunch of homosexual celebrities, right? And so you haven't really that's why you haven't heard from that guy in a while. He's a real scumbag, this guy. And but he was really famous. He was on all the reality shows and the sleazy stuff like that. He used to be on Stern back in the day. He would call into Howard Stern a lot. That's where I know him from. And before tonight, I legit thought this brother was dead. And it looks like they might be paying him an Oxycontin. I don't know what's going on, like how they were able to get this guy. Or I could, counterpoint, maybe like he reached out to them and he just like needs a job. And somebody on staff, maybe Ross Foreman, is just a fan of sleazy tabloid internet trolls from the mid 2000s, is like, let's give this person a chance. Someone tried to sell me on Perez saying, well, he's a huge influencer. It's like, he has not been an influence in anything in 15 years. This is a nothing human being, a real scumbag, got no business being on wrestling, and adds next to nothing. Like, not a single person is going to watch the show because Perez Hilton's on it. And I look, and from what I'm told, from what I'm I guess he was there in Las Vegas at a show or something like that. So he has a relationship with the company, I guess. And they're bringing him to Dallas. And I don't think he's going to be a part of the show. I don't think he's going to be a fixture on the show. But right away you're sending the signal that we're not to be taken seriously, because we brought, as EPW said, someone from the MySpace days who was MySpace famous. We're bringing them to TNA. Now, kind of makes sense because the last time TNA was a big deal was probably the MySpace days, and they're trying to be a big deal again. But I don't know. We'll see. They gotta have something big, and Perez Hilton's not it. I do like the card that they have presented for next week. You got Mike Santana versus Frankie, the future Kazarian, for the world title. That's going to be the main event. Now, if you go to patreon.com/the Mike and JD show, earlier today I did drop a new series where I'm actually week by week I'm reviewing the original Impact on Pop TV starting from week 1. So I watched episode 1 of Impact on Pop, and if you are not a Patreon subscriber, let me break down what was going on in that episode. Stop me if you've heard this one before. In October of 2015, EC3 and Matt Hardy had a main event. Matt Hardy won. Shortly after that, EC3 got his lawyers involved and was able to get the title off of Matt. So Matt was screwed out of the championship. So they had a little tournament, and in that tournament, it culminated at this Impact on Pop, right? So they had the semifinals of Impact on Pop, and then Matt and EC3 they win their semifinal matches, and then they meet in the main event on Pop TV. And you had Matt Hardy, the top babyface at the time in the company, although his brother Jeff was probably the top babyface, and Bobby Lashley at the time. But they were trying to push Matt as being the top babyface. And he's trying to get the belt that he wanted, Bound for Glory, that he was robbed of shortly after, against the top heel in the company, who happened to be EC3 at the time. That is beat for beat, almost slight variances, right? The current storyline with Mike Santana just 10 years later. So if you guys think we're going to get some new ideas out of this creative team, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, but I do think that Santana's winning. Now, EC3 ended up winning that match in 2016. And that match was that was a decent match. They kind of spammed each other's finishers on that one, but it did, some of the near falls did get pops, and so I'll give him some credit. But Matt was not at his best back then. He's actually moving around worse, but he's in much better shape now than he was in 2016. So he actually looks good. So he actually, believe it or not, he looks better today than he did in 2016 for sure. So Mike Santana doing the Matt Hardy storyline from 2016 will be going for the world title. I expect him to win, but this is TNA, so expect the unexpected. We could see a bunch of shenanigans. Elegance Brand versus Inspiration. They got to do that match again. They got to do at least 6 more times before people get sick of it. So there you go. You got Elijah and the Hardys versus the Order 4. I'm sure the Righteous will be watching out. And then, of course, the match that I pitched, and I got my wish, Myron Reed versus Leon Slater is also on that card. I do think that they're going to open the show with the Hardys, but they're going to have the one banger match, which tore the house down, I think, in Edmonton back in September. So I'm excited for that match. I think that's going to be the one that's it's going to get the snobs, It's like the ones that hate anything that isn't, move, kick out, 30 minutes, before you go home. You got to shoot someone to get them to lay down for 3 seconds. It's going to get that crowd. And I'm part of that, by the way. I love those matches. So next week looks pretty good. It's a way better card than what we had this week, although I didn't think this week was bad.